Hello,
Hello there.
how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
So, have you been along to one of these sessions before?
I've been to a meetup for the interoperability just last week, and this is my second meeting for CDF.
Okay, great. Well, what we're doing here really is just trying to coordinate some of the work on the MLOps roadmap,
Right.
uh, and uh, I don't know if you've had a look at the roadmap document.
Not a document, but MLOps in general.
Okay, well, what we're doing here is trying to collate uh, a set of documentation which basically paints the picture of all of the challenges that you can expect to encounter when working with machine learning assets in production environments. And so the uh, the MLOps roadmap document uh, sets out our vision for what MLOps should be um, within a best practice environment. It lists all of the challenges that we've encountered to date, and it uh, proposes a set of technology requirements that are necessary to be able to successfully address those challenges. And then it also tries to monitor the available solutions and potential solutions out there. So it paints a picture of you know what we have to be able to solve versus what we can do today, and when we expect to be able to uh, solve some of the other challenges in the future.
Right, right, yeah.
And the idea really is to encourage teams that are working on uh, continuous delivery and MLOps solutions to actually fully understand what the customer problems are in that space and what capabilities we need in the tooling uh, overall, so that people can actually achieve what they need to be able to achieve.
Right. I've been interested in MLOps for some time, I guess, this year. I have some background in machine learning and that kind of part. But now I'm moving towards the cloud and much more developer operations kind of side of things. And that's how I kind of found out about the CD Foundation. And before this, I spent some time looking what MLOps was. I think there was a conference over CDCon, and there was a presentation over MLOps as well. So that kind of captured my interest, and I've been thinking like as a developer, I would like to be self-sufficient to be able to make some products on my own, like projects, right? And incorporate machine learning into them. So that's why I really wanted to understand how machine learning operations kind of work together. Besides learning all technologies out there, like what are some practices, what problems do you guys have, what kind of issues do you guys run into, what kind of issues are there in the industry to explore. So that's kind of my like where my interest comes from, and that's kind of what I'm trying to look ahead and learn from the SIG here. Just trying to like understand what kind of problems they are, and if there's some way how can I help to contribute to that, to be like if I can share my knowledge or if I can help with my time, that would be good as well.
Okay,
Actually,
brilliant.
I'm just a student. I'm in the last year of my university. So kind of exploring these different spaces and learning about these kind of things because open source is really something that I'm interested in. So that's about me.
Okay, thank you. Well, there are lots of um, currently unsolved problems in this space. So it's a fascinating area if you're looking for something to get your teeth into, because there are lots and lots of challenges. and relatively few people really working on them. So I expect we're going to see a lot of really interesting projects over the next few years as people start to really get stuck into fixing some of these things.
So I have a question about MLOps, right? Um, how is it different from data engineering but to machine learning, right? I'm expecting that you have a component for machine learning that's somewhere between the pipeline that you have with data engineering, like you have some ingress, you have some egress, you have a pipeline, and then you probably make some predictions for the machine learning component. Is that right?
So that's close to what we see as being best practice, but it's actually a very long way away from what people are actually doing right now. So to give you a little bit of background, um, a lot of what goes on in the machine learning space at the moment has come from the data science field rather than from the sort of software engineering field. So in that space, you're typically looking at a group of people who come from a mathematical background and studied.
Your voice is cut off. I cannot hear you. I'll rejoin and maybe if an issue on my end. Let me rejoin. I'll Hello, can you hear me? I still cannot hear you. Uh, Working? Yeah. Hello. Um, can you hear me now? Um, I'm not sure. Um, I can hear myself and I can listen to audio on YouTube. I checked Zoom and it's kind of recording for me. I'm not really sure why this is happening.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, right. I've switched to an alternate microphone. Must be
Oh,
a driver problem.
oh, okay. Are you
Yeah.
are you like a Linux engineer?
I do a bit of everything.
That's interesting.
So yeah. So what I was saying was that Mostly, or the majority of people who are working in machine learning field at the moment have come from an academic background where they've studied a lot of machine learning techniques and statistics, but have only had a limited training in software development and no production engineering experience at all.
Right.
So what they learn in that space is to use Jupyter notebooks as a sketchbook in which to test their machine learning algorithms. Uh,
Right.
and then the assumption is made that what you need to do is take your Jupyter notebook and put it into a production environment, and the process of doing that is called MLOps.
Right.
Now, in practice, that's not a very good strategy for productionizing your machine learning models, because it's very hard to make it consistent and reliable. It's hard to make it actually a repeatable process with versioning, and uh, there are a number of problems that you can run into if you're relying on, Jupyter notebooks as the way of managing the essential parts of your process.
Right.
Um, and then there are a whole bunch of broader challenges that expand out from that. So in an academic situation, Python is really useful because it's easy to learn and it's got lots and lots of machine learning libraries associated with it. So you can get a huge acceleration on being able to make things work.
Right.
But of course, Python is a scripting language, uh, which means that it's inefficient, and it's also very difficult to manage dependencies in a Python environment.
Right.
So if you're relying on sets of libraries, it's hard to keep those under control over an extended period of time. Um, and you've also got the challenge that because you're using a scripted language, you're deploying your source code into production environments.
Right.
So anyone who can get access to that environment can potentially tamper with the source code and affect the running of your application in production without you knowing that that's happened.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's pretty important as well, because you may also want to introduce testing in between them. And then there's also the concept of A/B testing, um, as in trying to test out if your model performs the same as it did some months ago, and is it doing it right now, and it may be making some predictions that you may personally not expect, but the machine learning model is giving out, and you may want to test like if the data portions are correct or not, if data being fed into that is not. And I think some part of the process is a bit like trying to understand what data was used to create a kind of model as well, and trying to make sense, right? Is there any difference in the data that's coming in the future, as in data versioning, right? That we have some systems over there,
Yep.
like we have with source code versioning with Git, so your Bitbucket, stuff like that. So I think that's also component of it, because I've seen people treat machine learning models as black boxes where you just given some data, it gives you some output. And most of the time, I've seen innovation come from people learn to do feature engineering properly, where they manage to extract the right properties and the features from a given data set. I think that's where the most value I think comes from, when it comes to deploying models and testing out the accuracy. Obviously, every organization would want their models to do the best, but there's 100% of machine learning. It's never really possible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are some very significant challenges, and in fact, the data versioning one is very easy to say, but to actually implement it is incredibly difficult, because if you've got, say, 10 petabytes of training data, then the practical challenges of managing version snapshots of that much data, especially if it's changing significantly on a daily or weekly cadence, then you run into massive problems of just trying to keep a track of the training sets and the test data sets that you've been using for particular runs.
Right. Um, so what is MLOps propose as a solution, right? There are different solutions. Like coming from, because I also have an interest in software architecture, database design, stuff like that. And coming from that perspective, I think there's always a trade-off when you have to make, when you're working with such a large data set. You have to think about backups, you have to think about versioning, you have to think about if everything is being consistent. And there's also property of assets if you're dealing with such kind of property. If, for example, you have an application that has some kind of streaming kind of machine learning, where you say, like Facebook, right? Facebook has a lot of different mechanisms built into it, and some functionalities or features try to guess you, recommend you something based on what kind of things are you liking, you're posting or stuff like that. I'm interested to recommend you the same kind of things in the future as well. So there's also the idea where you have to continuously get data from the user, and then you have to process the output somewhere, and then you have to make a pipeline in such a way, right, where you have the machine learning model and learnings from the new data that is all coming into it at the same time, and it has to give some predictions on basis of that, right? So it's a very changing kind of model that you have to think about as well. So is that like a problem in machine learning, say machine learning operations?
So yeah, there are multiple problems in this space. One of the real challenges is that you've got two different categories of machine learning, if you like. You've got the type of machine learning that is run offline against pre-classified data, where it's easy to put that through some sort of pipeline and manage the whole process end to end. But then you've also got a class of learning which is happening online. So the system is learning from its inputs in real time and is retraining itself dynamically on the fly. And at that point, you're operating outside of a build environment. You're in your operational environment, and you're training in production.
Right.
So there are major differences between those two solutions, and it's difficult to do things in the first scenario and very difficult to do things in the second scenario, and so in a lot of cases right now, people are just not bothering to do a lot of the basic best practice to properly test and audit things. So it's the Wild West out there in many cases right now. There's the quality controls are limited, and we're likely to see significant numbers of large incidents over the next few years as some of these problems start to turn into issues.
So I can see people from software engineering coming in and learning about how to deploy machine learning models is quickly possible, because I think businesses will want to put features that can they can get from machine learning into their products as soon as possible. And for the principle of agile that we have, we would obviously like a solution that would remove the barriers and the hardness that it is to make a machine learning model. This doesn't have to be it's like the SOTA, right? The standard, the state of the art kind of model that we talk about in research, your academics, but it can be a simple model which, for example, has like 60 to 7% accuracy. I think most businesses will be okay with that, and they would like software engineers to come in and then help them easily deploy and manage these kind of machine learning models in their applications, so they can provide some kind of systems, right? Because we often have I've like been through some machine learning courses, and we often have the examples of recommendation systems where you can recommend a user something. But what bothered me about those was that when I was sitting down and actually trying to implement kind of that kind of thing in Jupyter notebooks, I realized I was given a data that was already collected from somewhere. And while I could give some prediction, I can give you some accuracy or precision over that, I cannot actually provide you some input over what that kind of decision actually is. You help you help me change the data in a new way, so maybe I can get a better data in the future. Maybe I can help that make the part of an application. So do you think that in the coming future there will be a large boom of that, and why hasn't there already been a large push? I think MLOps is relatively not that popular right now. It's obscure, but if you go out and try to find it, you will obviously come across it.
So a lot of this comes down to what's available to people right now, um, and that's primarily driven by what's supported in cloud environments. Now, what's supported in the main cloud environments is based on the demand from customers for particular types of solution. So it's a bit of a circular situation right now, in that the cloud environments are providing Jupyter notebooks in production because that's what the customers are asking for. And so there's been a drift towards that particular way of working, but there hasn't been sufficient work to evaluate whether that was the right direction or whether it's going to lead to escalating problems in the future. Hence why we set up the roadmap itself, so that we could paint the bigger picture. Because if you think about it, most of the work that's going on in machine learning at the moment is small teams who are experimenting to see if they can build models that will improve their existing products or allow them to release new products. So they've got minimal practical experience, and they're just trying to do whatever's easiest to run an experiment and try and incorporate it into an application.
Yeah.
So that means that most people are at the bottom of the ladder in terms of the journey to having a machine learning application in production at scale for an extended period of time.
Right.
So they're not yet aware of all of the problems that are likely to be encountered as they climb up that ladder. So lots of people have made lots of approximations by saying, oh, we only need to solve this problem and this problem, because they're not aware of the 50 other problems that they also need to solve to actually be successful.
Right.
So what there's a large number of people trying to enter at the bottom of the ladder, um, and statistically about 80% of them are failing to make it into production, because the bits that they're doing only get them so far, and then they run into a showstopper problem and they can't go live.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So.
so what we've been trying to do is um, work back the other way rather than try and create new technologies for MLOps as a standalone practice. What
Right.
we've been doing is encouraging the incorporation of MLOps features into existing CI/CD tooling.
Right.
So, for example, Jenkins X.
Right.
Within Jenkins X, you can treat machine learning as just another asset in your build pipeline.
Yeah.
And in fact, Jenkins X will create not just your production environment, but it will also create the training architecture that you need to run your trainings. So uh, you can use a quick start for a machine learning project, and you can select a particular um, machine learning platform and basic algorithm, and it will generate a template project for you with all of that set up. You can then refine that model to do what you want it to do,
Right.
and then when you commit your changes, it will automatically set up a training environment, run the training, evaluate the train model against a set of test criteria, and if it passes your thresholds for a successful model, then it will push that model into a staging environment where you can test it against the rest of your application and then promote it into production.
Right. So for today, we'll be having someone else. And what should we talk about today in today's meeting?
So the thing that's significant from our perspective is that we need to um, make sure that we've got all of the updates in for the 2021 document.
Right.
So it'd be really helpful if you were able to find half an hour at some point to read through the MLOps roadmap as it stands today, and then let me know if you've seen any patterns or challenges that we haven't included in last year's document, and then we'll get an update in for that.
So you mean this link, right? I found it from GitHub.
Let me just put that. That's correct. Yeah, that's the right version.
Okay. So I will go through this and I will read more about it. And if there's anything addition that I think can be done, I'll let you know, or I'll make a pull request if that kind of works as well.
Okay, that's brilliant. Right. Well, thank you for coming along. It's been interesting chatting with you, and look forward to having you along in the future and having some contributions on the document.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. I'm super excited to be like a part of something like this because I feel like some like MLOps is something that I think will blow up in the future as machine learning has done before. But instead of like the R&D part of it, we will moving towards the production kind of part of it, right? And how we can quickly incorporate machine learning changes in the model and stuff like that. So I think MLOps is the right kind of perspective on that kind of thing. And it's something that I can like I actually want to work professionally sometime, if I can, as a machine learning engineer. Um, so I guess a bit more background on me was with that I started learning on machine learning back in last year's June and July, much more seriously. I got a certification in deep learning from deeplearning.ai. But after that, I felt like I started thinking about what are some ideas or projects that I can make that have machine learning in them, right? And I was quickly dumbstruck because I could not find any easy way of putting my models out there, or I was very limited to what technology I was using. So I only knew one way of doing this in this kind of thing, but I did not even know if this can be done in this other technology, right? Because I could not find tutorial on it, I could not find any mentions, blog posts, articles on it. And I thought that was kind of strange because people in the industry who are actually using machine learning, how are they actually putting the models out there? So I wanted to learn about that, and that's kind of how I found my way to MLOps. So I think that's an interesting journey. But yeah, I'll be sure to contribute and ask you if I have any questions. Um, that would be pretty great as well. So I would love to do that. Sure, for sure.
Brilliant. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's been good to chat to you, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on the document.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Cheers. Bye
Nice
now.
chatting with you.